Get so good at your craft in your 20s, because when you hit your early 30s, everyone around you is in position now.
I think truly going, God, what do you have for my life? And I'll do it. And then allowing him to speak, and then actually stewarding that word and doing it.
Grinding the hours that nobody's watching, where you don't get paid. Because sometimes like God's calling things out of us, but like, are you willing to work for it?
It was brutal, because when I gave it up, it was like, I didn't want to give it up. I came to the cold face of the reality that I wasn't going to make it, because it's very easy to lead people astray when you're influential and you're saying things that sound so good and tasty. But I'm going, man, in fact, most of the major worship artists are sold out Jesus followers that love their family and are faithful and are in church every Sunday. Dude, it's not a room I've gone into recently where someone hasn't said they grew up with you or they know you. And he said, why is that? I said, I don't actually know, but I just think I've always loved the hang. Over 50% of Australians don't even think Jesus was a historical figure. 50% of Australians put Jesus up there with Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. So we're here arguing that Jesus is part of a Trinity and is the Son of God. And people going, dude, he didn't even live.
How are we reaching them though?
So we're not in a post-Christian era. I think we're actually in a pre-Christian era.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And just before we get into it, if you have not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. We are so thankful for everyone who already has, and everyone that just listens to this podcast. You know, this is a labor of love. We do this for you and to get the guests you want to see on this show. So please consider subscribing and enjoy today's episode.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Creators Podcast. My name's Sam. This is Josh, and we have a very special guest,
We sure
Mr.
do.
Cameron. What's your middle name?
Charles Jordan.
Gullo.
Yeah.
Wow.
Two middles.
Yeah, two.
Charles Jordan.
Charles Jordan.
Charles Jordan. Cameron Charles Jordan Gullo.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, bro. Honestly, I'm pumped about this, man. We've become recent friends, but felt like I've known you my whole life in a weird way. We both kind of grew up in the same town, you know, that church vibe. Like we kind of knew. I definitely knew of you, but I never connected before. But the last month or 2 months has been really special, man. So I just really appreciate you being here and coming on.
Feelings mutual, man. Been great to meet you. Obviously known Josh for a few years.
Yeah, you guys know each other, eh? Like, tell me that story.
I think we met.
You said you were on a panel together at some stage too?
Wow.
Through Sunny Coast Creative Conference.
Josh and I actually only hang out in panel / interview style
That's the only
situations.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah, I think that was the first time we met. You were up leading worship or something for your brother's church, I think, and I was there. So,
Mr. Cameron, so bro, tell us firstly, what makes you tick, bro? Like what I mean by that, I mean like what just makes you like, yeah, anything. The first thing that comes to mind. I'm sure there's many.
I was having a conversation in an adjacent way only today about this, and it's people.
Yeah, you're a people person.
I
sure.
was with one of the artists that I work with today, and he goes, dude, it's not a room I've gone into recently where someone hasn't said they grew up with you or they know you. And he said, why is that? I said, I don't actually know, but I just think I've always loved the hang.
Yeah, you've always been a big hang guy.
Yeah, I love the hang.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I'm the youngest of 5. So like all my older brothers and sisters, like they're all very social. So just from the youngest age, growing up as a pastor's kid, I was just always around people. And so I guess I just loved it. And now being in the kind of line of work that I am now, that just comes in handy.
Yes,
to have a few people in the phone book.
testament to the hang. I was in Nashville a couple of years ago. Cam sees I'm in there on Instagram and he messages me. He goes, bro, I'm in Nashville. We hanging out?
Shut up. You guys
Literally.
hung out in
And then
Nashville?
within like 20 minutes, he jumps in an Uber and he rocks up to the cafe we're at.
No, bro.
And we're just hanging out. And then he goes, I got to go to this other meeting, but great hangs. I'll see you later.
Dude, testament to the hang. That was a good hang.
It was.
I think we were at Frothy Monkey.
We were,
which I don't
too.
go to
Monkey,
anymore.
yeah. Oh, why not? What happened?
You know, for anyone that's in the Nashville area knows why any conservative Christian doesn't
Or
generally
tell
go
us.
to Frothy
Is
Monkey.
it really liberal? Is
Pretty
it?
woke.
Okay, right. Yeah. Okay. Did you want to go into that? Or?
Not really.
Oh, okay, that's fine. So Mr. Cameron, so what are you doing now? I mean, I know, but for the audience, what do you do, man? Like, what's your job now? You're back on the Sunshine Coast with me. Love it, Sunny Coast boys. But what do you do?
I'm an artist manager working primarily with Christian artists and worship groups from all around the world. So it's nothing. It's no great new invention, but in the worship landscape, it really is an artist manager is an advocate. It's the idea is to help bring the group or the artist to the next level. You become their it's an advocate is probably the best way to describe it, but it's artist manager. Most general market artists would have one. And so what's unique, I think, a little bit about what I'm involved with is that I'm able to bring the expertise of the industry, but also as a pastor's kid growing up in the church, keeping really close to heart the values of the church as well. Those two things can coexist. I believe they coexist.
Is there not really like a space for that right now?
I'm not saying that there isn't, but it's just what I do.
Yeah, got you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And how long have you been doing this for?
Just over 4 years.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So I'm new to the business. But
how'd you get into it? Like, tell us.
my background was in sales, so I was working, I was selling all manner of products.
What kind of products?
All legal.
Okay, yeah, good.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I got.
What were some of the legal products?
I was doing everything. I started out selling insurance. I ended up when I was younger, and then I ended up selling like solar energy systems for like factories or houses or whatever. And that was cool.
And I bet you killed it too.
I liked that job.
Yeah.
That was a good job. And then my friend Alex Pappas, who I still manage today, we're day ones, meaning that his first day as an artist was my first day as a manager.
Yeah, wow, cool.
And so he approached me and he said, "Hey, can we catch up?" And this time I'd actually fully given up music. I'd hung the guitar up, so to speak. And earlier on, I was always trying to be an artist, and I tried every manner of trying to make it in the music business as a writer, producer, everything. And I just couldn't write a hit song. So I hung the guitar up and I just dived into my work. I was doing a lot of sales. So I'd fully given up music.
Was that hard for you though? Because like, I feel like it sounds like it was a dream. Like, was it hard for you to give that up?
It was brutal because when I gave it up, it was like, I didn't want to give it up. I came to the cold face of the reality that I wasn't going to make it. And I was in my late 20s.
Tell me about that moment.
It was brutal.
When did you realize?
I guess that feeling was probably coming on for some time, but when it hit me, I was like in the back end of Sydney this one hot Saturday morning. I was in a suit selling solar, and I would always go home at the end of the day and write songs or do whatever. And it just sort of hit me in that moment, maybe stronger than any other moment. I was like, I'm not going home to write a song today. It's not happening. And I guess it was just a realization that it was over. And so in that moment, I just said a prayer. I was like, Lord, I lay this down, and I felt like I was saying to the Spirit, God, maybe I made an idol out of this. Maybe I made it into something it was never meant to be. And so, Lord, I'm sorry. I think that's what I've done here. And so I lay it down, and I'll never play guitar again if you don't want me to. Like, I'm over. And then in that moment, sometimes it's hard to know if God's showing you something or if it's your mind, but it really felt reasonably clear that this picture was from the Spirit. And I felt like the Spirit showed me a picture of Abraham walking Isaac up Mount Moriah. And most of us listening to this probably know the story. Of course, God gives Abraham this son that he'd wanted so desperately all his life. He finally gives it to him. Then he asks him to sacrifice his son. And of course, he does that, but then God intervenes. And so I feel like the Spirit showed me that story to say, what you've laid down to kill today, I'm going to save and I'm going to use. And I was like, whoa, well, that's encouraging, but I just laid this down.
Yeah.
So I went home and I sold all my gear. I deleted like all the music production software off my computer.
Really?
Yeah, got rid of all my guitars and everything. I was just like, if that's to be, that's on you, but I'm moving on. So did that, moved on, and to get to the punchline, my friend Alex Pappas, as I was mentioning, we were just friends through church and similar circles in Sydney, and he reaches out, he's like, "Dude, can we catch up?" No problem. We were buddies. We would do that regularly. And he goes, "Man, I got something to ask you." And this is probably a year later from giving music up. And it was a strange year because I had to kind of find a lot about myself because everything I was into was related to music. My friendships were related to music. It had become my identity in many ways. Things I would do socially, certainly the people I hung out with were all in those circles. So I didn't feel like I had a lot to talk about in that year. I just kind of got into my work and was saving for a home and just trying to be a good husband and, figuring it out. And so my buddy Alex reaches out, we go for coffee. He goes, "Mate, I want to start a solo project and I need a manager and I think you're the guy."
And you thought about doing it?
Dude, the thought there'd never been a moment in my life where I thought, which is crazy to think now. I was like,
so thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And so
wow.
I said, dude, not only am I not the guy, I don't know anything about the music business and I quit music, and he's like, no, you are the guy, dude. I think you've got all the skills, you know how to sell and you do know music. Like you've been around it all your life. Like have a think about it. I was like, okay. So I sat on it for a few days and the wires started to connect. I was like, man, maybe being a music manager or an artist manager is like as being a salesman. And to be honest, I was dead right.
Yeah,
Like, it is very much. It is.
Yeah.
It's
P.S.
true.
Sales is awesome. I did sales my whole life too. Sales is actually so like it's the best, bro. For people like us.
Yeah.
You'd be good at sales too.
Yeah.
Like sales is the best.
It's
anyway.
fun, especially if you are selling a product you enjoy or believe in. For sure, it makes it even easier. But yeah, it's good. You're just with people all day, having a yarn, having a yappuccino is what my little nephew says.
Yappuccino.
Which is I've been using in the last few days.
Yeah,
but
that's a big move there. Yappuccino.
So I said, okay, there could be something in this. I felt a real peace about it. So I said yes.
Wait. I got to slow you down for a second, okay? Because there's so
It's
much
full
in
on.
that. What did your wife say? Because your wife is of great wisdom. How did that play out? Because it's like, hey, babe, I feel like I should quit my job as a salesman and do this. Was it like that, or was it not? Was it a smoother transition? And how was her role in this?
It was smoother than that. There wasn't a conversation of quitting the job yet. It was just like, let's add this onto the roster and suss it out.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I have to thank Alex for asking me and identifying that in my life, I also have so much to thank my wife Demelza for, because she's like, you have to do that.
Yeah, wow,
Yeah, right.
awesome.
She pushed you.
Yeah, I was like, and every day, like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Some days, we're all credits to think, man, am I cut out?
Can I
This?
really
She's
do
always,
this?
you have to do it. And
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
So I said yes, and then honestly, within I'd love to measure out the dates, but within 1 to 2 months from that moment, I was making a full-time living off music. It happened so fast.
Wow.
And then I was reminded of, and I can talk about how that happened, but I was then reminded of when I was in the thick of it. So then I was like, fuck, I'm going to quit my job. I'm making a living now.
Wow.
It happened really quickly. It was the Lord was on it. And then it came to mind about that promise, or that encouragement the Spirit gave me when I laid it down. What you've laid down today, I'm going to save and I'm going to use. And I was like, whoa, there it is.
Yeah.
It wasn't by my own hand.
I love that. It's like, so what's also awesome there is like so many people like have dreams in them, but they sometimes like the responsibilities of life as you get older weigh them down. Like, oh, I've got a family now, I can't pursue this thing. But the fact that you're like, I'm going to do both. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to see if I can still make this work and like grind in the hours that nobody's watching where you don't get paid to see what because sometimes like God's calling things out of us, but like, are you willing to work for it?
Yeah.
Like, are you willing to actually chase what God's calling you in to do? Or are you just going to like settle for these things? And it's not instant, like, here's all this money and everything and like success straight away. You got to like earn it. So that's like awesome that you're like, I'm going to do this. And your wife was like, no, keep working night times, keep working 2 jobs. Like, it's not easy to do. And that's like really encouraging for like so many people that they might have something, but it's like living proof. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you got to do both at once.
Reinhard Bonnke, this line has been so present in my life, especially over the last few years, but Reinhard said, faith is spelled R-I-S-K. And it's just so sick.
Yeah, I love that quote.
And
That's awesome.
Now it will be with you, because you're like, all right, it really is just taking a swing.
Yeah.
And
it is, man. It is taking a swing. So you took the swing and you started making a living pretty quick. That's fast.
There was a few things that just came to be quite quickly. Again, that's the God element of it all. But the reality is, there was Joel Houston who started this label called Invordo. And so we called Joel and we sort of said, hey man, do we have your blessing to do this project? Because in the Hillsong world at the time, this sort of solo thing wasn't done. We're talking 4.5 years ago now.
Yeah, wow.
And
far out. Was that all happening 4.5 years ago?
And so this is when it all started. But,
Yeah.
And so we called Joel, and Joel's like, I don't know if I've ever shared this story before, but we
You
just
are
call
now.
him and we go, dude, do we have your blessing to do this? And he goes, not only do you have my blessing, but if you build it into what I'm doing over here with Invordo, I'll bring you on, Cam, and we'll give you a go.
And you're like, whoa.
I was like, whoa, okay. And then that snowballed, and so I kind of had a gig as a Christian artist manager in Australia, like quite unusual.
Yeah, right.
Then that led into
Would you label yourself as a Christian artist manager or an artist manager with Christians? Like, how would you?
probably both.
Yeah, like what's your email signature say?
Artist manager.
Artist manager. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm almost exclusively working with Christians.
Would you work with non-Christians? Or you don't know.
I think like everyone's got their muscle in certain areas. My muscle's in the Christian world. There's
Sure.
no doubt
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah,
so
sure.
would I, if it was right? But
Yeah.
like that's why someone would come to me because of my
Got you.
I suppose my
Yeah, it's your niche.
my experience in the Christian space. Yeah.
Got you.
So that happens, and then during that year off, if you will, from music when I was doing sales, we had a kind of almost, I'd say, like a chance meeting with Delta Goodrem.
Right.
And this was like a so left field. Her fiance is a really old, great friend of mine.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And Delta and my wife Demelza connected and became good friends, and sort of just the four of us became good friends.
Yeah.
And that was great. And I not even to now, I don't need anything from her. She's a great friend. But it was just a genuine friendship. Like I wasn't doing music anymore, so I didn't have an ask from her. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
we were just
yeah,
friends.
Yeah.
And then around the same time that Alex asked me to be his manager, I got it. I suppose, remember I said it was within 1 or 2 months? At the same time, I got an email from Delta's manager saying, hold this performance date. You're going to do a performance and play guitar on The Voice.
Yeah, right.
I was like, I don't even own a guitar because I'd sold it. I'd sold everything.
Yeah,
so I was like, okay.
That's awesome.
And then that developed quite quickly, and I ended up I toured the world with Delta over a couple of years as a guitarist.
Wow, man.
So that was cool because I fulfilled some of those childhood sort of dreams.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
I was
that's
able
cool.
to tick a few of those buckets.
It's fascinating, bro. Yeah, because you, in a way, you almost went from, God, okay, I'll lay this down, to then just getting all the opportunity that I know you're not writing your own songs, but bro, traveling the world with a popular music artist is like not a chance many people get to get.
Yeah, it was.
And it just happened.
It was unbelievable, and it was all happening at the same time, and so it was cool. Like I'll never forget that. Like I laid it down, and then roughly 12 months later, God brought Alex into my life, and the artist management, Delta into my life, to touring. And whilst I was playing guitar for her, which was no longer my dream, I was able to just learn unbelievable amounts.
Fully.
Yeah, of course you would.
touring at that level,
Yeah.
the people I got to meet with, just even really a lot of the things you just get to observe.
Yeah, of
I
course.
was able to see how Delta's manager operated, who became one of my mentors. She was an amazing resource for me, and she would just pick up my phone call when I had questions, and just being able to learn from someone like that, who is a titan. It was really cool, and all that's kind of led into now 4 years on, doing this full time.
It's amazing. So like, what does it look like now? So 4 years on, full time, got a bunch of artists. Like, how are you feeling? Like, what's going on?
It's moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's still a long way to go.
Of course.
Up until about 18 months ago, I was employed with that label.
Okay. Yeah.
And
that stopped.
yeah, that came to an end, unfortunately. All things considered, it was a positive experience.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for that opportunity that Joel gave me.
Yeah.
With Invordo. And then I was faced with a moment, like really a crossroad. Like, all right, that employment is gone. I still had bits and pieces on the side, like some touring with Delta and so on. But that safety net was now like, oh.
Scary, bro.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, what do I do?
Yeah.
I just took a swing. And so I was like, let's just keep going. I'll do it directly now instead of having an agency involved in this, and we'll see what happens. And that was 18 months ago. And so, like I said, still a long way to go, but we're out here and we're doing it.
I respect that so much, man.
Thanks, man.
It's the road less traveled, to step out and go, I feel God's calling me to this. I don't know what it looks like, how it feels. And it's brutal. It's not safe. It's actually really scary, but that's faith, right? Like Jesus asked Peter to step out of the boat. Like,
so true.
That's rough, bro. Like that, you know what I mean? Like it'll be okay. Get goosebumps thinking about it, because just walking that road. I think truly going, God, what do you have for my life, and I'll do it. And then firstly allowing him to speak, and then actually stewarding that word and doing it. Everyone likes getting prayed for and getting knocked over, but it's what are you going to do when you get back up? Like you had this moment with the Lord, and he spoke to you, and he gave you an image, but you, to your credit, stewarded the word that he gave you. You took what he said, and you're like, oh, okay, I can do this. And there's faith steps that follow that, and so.
And the confidence of a good wife to keep,
man. Oh my gosh. The amount of times that Jasmine has pulled me out of ruts and just
exactly,
set me back on track, man. They're just, I wouldn't be able to do it without her.
Yeah. The running part is unbelievable.
Yeah. It's everything, eh? So you mentioned Hillsong. You were going to Hillsong for a while, weren't you?
13 years.
Wow. Long time. So they're more than your home, like your parents' church almost.
It'd be
very similar.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated, was obviously seeing like a massive shift, I think, in the church in Australia, particularly when everything started changing and shifting for Hillsong. How was that whole experience for you?
It was, man, I mean, there's too many podcasts about that, but the reality is,
for you, how was it for you?
It was quite challenging. You know, I think everyone has their own, really, whether you went to Hillsong or not, everyone felt that shake in
of course.
either direct, indirect ways. It was my church, it was my community. It was all that. It had also then become by some extension my work, because even though it was this label I was working for, it was so connected to Hillsong.
Yeah.
And a lot of the artists I was working for were all from Hillsong. So everyone was hit.
Yeah.
It was pretty challenging, but also like, man, that's just life.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'd hate to say whatever,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like,
It just
cool.
is what it
like
is, yeah.
tomorrow there'll be something hectic that will happen too.
Yeah.
Lord willing, I don't know. Lord willing, not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just life. It was hard, but you know, there's a story to tell.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and it's funny, like looking back on it now, you go, wow, like look how far I've come. It was difficult for sure, but it just makes you stronger. Like, yeah, everyone had to figure it out. There was no rule book at that point.
Yeah, for anyone.
No.
At any level. How do you think that changed? Because, I mean, in my opinion, and someone who's removed, but inherently, I mean, if you're part of the ACC, if you're part of the Pentecostal Church in Australia, you have ties to Hillsong.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, and, you know, so grateful and thankful for all that Hillsong has done for the church. But I think when it all was unraveling and then COVID happened, in this time, I think there was a massive shift that was taking place in the Aussie church. I don't know if you'd agree with this, but whether the shift was for good or whether it was for bad, whatever, there has been a shift that's taken place, I think, in the church in Australia. Do you guys sense that? Do you guys sense there being a change? I've got my own thoughts about it, but what do you guys think? Do you think the church is changing, has changed? Talk to me. Don't be scared. Don't be shy.
What do you think that shift is? You're talking about it.
Potentially a shift. You know, you and I have had, you know, one area, you and I have had chats about like just this sense of like there's revival coming to Australia. You know, like there's deep roots of revival, you know, and I want to get onto the song that your group wrote, you're managing a group who wrote a song called, what's it called that Locke wrote?
A Great Awakening.
Great Awakening. And I sense that too. In a way, I think there was a shift away from, you know, I've got to be careful with what I say because, and I know you got to be careful. I don't want to, you know, as you said perfectly, there's plenty of podcasts talking about Hillsong, and I don't even really want to make it about Hillsong. It's just as an example. There's a shift away from big, massive, show to like authentic, small. We see it in Hollywood, like in our industry, in movies. Like people would rather watch YouTubers, TikTokers, and Instagram influencers over Hollywood stars in a movie. People are watching TV shows over movies. They're watching YouTube and then they're watching TikTok. I think there's a breakdown happening in the next generation coming through. Not even our generation, like our kids' generations will feel this more to like the authentic, the human touch, the human experience. Whereas I feel like we've had a lot of focus on the show, on the big, on the wow, on the loud, on the lots of people. And I think I'm sensing a shift that there's there's small pockets happening all around Australia. And like we just had a conversation before about there's people in Australia who have never heard the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
Like actually, I literally just came out of a conversation last month. Like she had never heard, like what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You know, and what's scary for her, if she walked into a big, massive auditorium with things pumping and going crazy, which we put a lot of focus on, which is fine. I'm not against it. She would walk straight out. I know that for a fact. And so, but I think what's happened is it's dispersed a lot of people and things, and it's made people think, okay, how am I reaching people rather than how do I bring people to church? What do you guys think? Push back, I don't care. What do you guys think?
In reference more to that like time period, what I think I noticed more was almost like an illusion when like COVID happened, like you couldn't do church and like they shrunk. I think people kind of just like dispersed more, but now it almost feels like they're growing more. Like a lot of churches I know are actually having like more people coming to them growing bigger. And I don't know, I actually think the opposite with the bigness of a church, because I got challenged on that when I was a punk little 17-year-old kid rebelling, going like to my youth pastor, this is wrong. And then Aaron Lucas again.
Wait, what's wrong?
Big churches, the big thing, the masses of people
what
coming
about
together. Well, like the whole like, why is church a stadium? This feels wrong. Like there shouldn't be churches this big, like the mega church. I was saying like mega churches are wrong. There shouldn't be churches this big. And then Aaron Lucas, who funny enough keeps coming up on this podcast, having a profound impact on my life.
Aaron's awesome.
He asked me what I thought, and he said, well, what do you think, what did Jesus come to do? I'm like, die for us. Like, what does God want? To be reconnected with his children. And he goes, wouldn't the desire of God's heart everyone be gathering and worshiping to God? Like, isn't the desire for like the whole nation of Australia to be gathering and worshiping and stuff? And it's like coming together. Like we even saw it, like the awakening that happened literally around the corner in Fortitude Valley, like thousands of people coming together, which is like an awesome thing. So it's like, I actually think it's like, I'm not against it. I'm like, I think it's like just when you prioritize people over the faith is when it's wrong. But yeah, that's what my whole thought and stance on the whole thing is.
Yeah. Did you sense a shift during that COVID time?
Yeah, I think there was a bit of change in it where I think it was almost an illusion, like people thought it was falling down. But then it almost felt like coming out of it, it's like, oh no, I think the church is actually quite strong and healthy. And it's like, it's actually growing again and like people are coming and everything.
Yeah, okay, can I clarify maybe what I was saying? So what I completely agree. I'm all for big churches means people are coming and they're loving the Lord and we're growing together and we're corporately gathering, and I love that. I think maybe it was more of like a mindset shift, maybe on some attentions where we would focus on certain things in our show and production and doing big conferences. I think there was more of a focus on particular areas, whereas I think we were missing that authentic, close human touch with people. I felt like the church was missing that element. Not that it was big. I'm all for big churches. Big churches means that's lots of people coming to church. I love it. I mean, it maybe changed our focus and it shifted our attention. Okay, well, we can't meet together. So how are we connecting with one another during the COVID period? How are we connecting? How are we checking in? How are we praying? Like I think it shifted maybe the priorities of church. And the reason I even asked is because I was just thinking about that time and I just took myself back to COVID, and in some ways it's a little bit scarring what happened. Like it was an intense time. But I think a shift took place throughout the whole world. I mean, I sensed it when we were living in America. I sensed it here. And I sense a shift now, and maybe I'm not articulating it right, but I sense a shift happening, and that it has been happening since that time.
Well, I'll share with you, just as you guys are speaking, a few thoughts that come to mind. Firstly, in respects to big church, small church, I love that, like the picture we get in the first couple of chapters of Acts. You have 3,000 that were added to the church in the one day. We had the upper room 120, and then we had the meeting house to house. Mm-hmm. So in this one chapter or two chapters, we get all versions, versions of church: mega church, average size church, home church, and I love that. I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Still kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
2,000 years on. So I'm like, okay, that's
pretty cool.
That's cool. But to kind of develop the idea a little further, I was listening to a podcast today, and one of the guys who was from a really well-known worship group in the States, and he was talking about saying how, we've adulted the priesthood, talking about the commercialization of the industry, inverted commas, or Christian music industry or the Christian industry. And I just go, man, yeah, but who's doing that? Like, name names. Like, are you talking about yourself? If you're talking about yourself, just say that I've adulted this.
Yeah, sure.
And then repent.
Yeah, sure.
But don't go, we've adulted it.
Sure.
Because I'm going, well, hang on, like, hand to God. Like, if I have, tell me. But hand to God, I haven't.
Fully.
I give everything. All that I have is from God.
Yeah,
everything I do is for the Lord or for my family.
Yeah.
Or for the lost, or for the, I haven't adulted
Pure
it.
intentions, yeah.
So what are you saying? And that's so clickbaity. It's like you hear this, especially from an influential person, and all the comment sections like, oh my God,
Blowing
preach
up.
it for the back person in the back. I'm like, what? Are you serious? Now, I'm not saying he's wrong, but I'm saying be clear though.
Sure.
Because it's very easy to lead people astray when you're influential and you're saying things that sound so good and tasty. But I'm going, man, in fact, most of the major worship artists and worship groups that I've encountered, and granted I haven't met them all, but are sold out Jesus followers that love their family and are faithful and are in church every Sunday and are tithers and the rest. And I'm just going, well, dude, like, what fruit is there in that conversation? You know, I'm not saying it's what you're saying. I'm just going, there's just so much in all this.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
is there a shift? Like, hopefully there's a shift back to the pure things of the Spirit and the Scripture.
Yeah. I
think that's my impression, is that really that's where most genuine Jesus followers are trying to get to.
Yes.
You know, and if that's the shift you're observing, and there's always going to be shifts, but that's what I'm observing. It could just be the circles I'm walking. I think people are either leaving faith or they're getting more dialed in.
Yeah, fully.
Agree, completely agree.
That's what I reckon.
Do these conversations make you guys nervous?
No.
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Before I'm talking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, podcast people listening, this goes out, and you think about it a bit more. But I think
to your friend, you said before about who'd never even heard of Jesus. You know, I think we also. I heard it once said, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it's just, again, it sounds good. It's clickbaity. Yeah. But you need a preacher with the Bible in the hand and a newspaper in the other, right?
Yeah,
it's pretty famous. It's cool though, right? Because we don't live in the aftermath of the charismatic. We kind of live in the post aftermath of the charismatic revival. So Australia became really Christian at certain points, but that was a long time ago. And like, I was talking about it recently saying, I'd love, like, imagine if God could do a revival again like before. And if we can go to the song Great Awakening. Yeah. The 3 verses talks about, you know, God, like, I've got faith for salvations all across this land, all across the Great South land, like you did in Azusa Street, like you've done in the Upper Room, like these historic moments. But when it culminates in the chorus, it says, God, I'm praying for revival like the world has never seen. Because it's likely when I don't know what God's going to do, but I'm not going to go do it again. Like that is my prayer, but it's also God.
Do it like you did it.
Do it like we've never seen as well. Yeah. Because if a revival only looks like long-haired, barefooted hippies on a beach, it's probably not going to happen because we don't live in the 70s as much as I love that vibe. Yeah. But it's just not what people are wearing, what people look like today. Yeah, the revival's going to it's going to be reflective of the times we're in.
So that's what I mean. Like, that's the shift that I'm trying to get at, is like, what is that shift? Like, because in my opinion, we had in the early 2000s, we had a great move of like big event and like corporate altogether big, and that might still be the thing, I don't know, but I'm sensing that there's a push away from that in the world, not just, you know, as I said about Hollywood, going back to TikTok, you know, like we were talking this morning with someone who came in, like there's a shift away from like caring about what Brad Pitt's doing and more caring about like what Mr. Beast is creating on YouTube Shorts, you know? Like there is this move away from big polished production, which, you know, is tough for an agency because that's what kind of like what we specialize in.
Sure.
But I can absolutely identify that there is and has been a change specifically since COVID that has happened. And I think, you know, I think the church should lead that shift, not the world, you know, we can talk about church and state, but I think the church should lead the shift. Yeah, we could go there. We can go anywhere.
Well, you know, a friend of mine, Nathan Finocchio, said this on one of his, you know, conversations similar to what we're having now. And he goes, I'm not interested in giving up ground, only taking ground. Yeah, so, you know, we've gained so much ground as a church. I don't want to just give it up.
No, I like that.
Let's take new ground though. Yeah. Sometimes it does mean redialing in some of the things that need, and that's always going to be the case. But I got distracted, but you said before your friend that didn't know, had never even heard of Jesus, you know, there'll be someone listening to this that will know the numbers better. But roughly speaking, I mean, less than 20% of Australia go to church. That's a big shift from 50 years ago when it was over 50%.
True.
So there is a social shift in Australia. And then over 50%, this is the numbers that have come out in a recent study last year, over 50% of Australians don't even think Jesus was a historical figure.
Yeah, wow.
So 50% of Australians put Jesus up there with Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and Robin Hood. So we're here arguing that Jesus is part of a Trinity and is the Son of God, and the people going, dude, he didn't even live. Now, historian worth their salt would argue that Jesus walked.
No.
But we're not dealing with historians. We're dealing with average people who 50% of Australians don't think he was a real person.
How are we reaching them though?
So we're not in a post-Christian era. I think we're actually in a pre-Christian era.
Yeah, wow.
And which is why I believe there is a shift happening and why I believe that Australia is ripe for revival, because in many ways we're presenting Jesus to an Australia that's never heard of Jesus before. And that excites me.
So how are we, this is good, this is really good. How are we getting to those people? Practically. Are they coming to our big services? Look, they might be, hey, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just making a point. Like, how are we, because I agree with everything you just said, but what is it that you think those people, how do they best resonate with coming to terms with this Jesus who loves them, who forgave them, who died on a cross, who they can have a relationship with? How are we changing or doing things in a new way or taking new ground, as you said, as the church for them?
Well, I mentioned before about not giving up ground, only taking it. I don't think we give up our church services. No way. The church service on a Sunday is still such an incredible gateway for people finding faith, finding community, all those things. So I want to, we that's an amazing thing to have.
And they need somewhere to go when you do introduce them to Jesus, they need somewhere to go and grow and go from milk to meat and grow and,
But what I'm being encouraged, and it's cool to be on this podcast with you guys as creatives and as an agency, is I think, there's never been a better time to be making Christian film. I don't make film, but I'm just observing what's happened, box office numbers.
Yeah.
We've seen incredible successes with The Chosen, Jesus Revolution, and other films. And so now, I don't know what's happened in your space.
Which are all grassroots films, by the way. The Chosen is crowdfunded.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it's
was at least.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, how it started anyway. Yeah, correct.
And so I'm going, okay, we're taking ground here in the space. Like I've had guys in the industry call me in the film industry. Again, it's not a field that I'm in, so directly at least, going, hey, what's going on with Christian film? How do we get involved? I suppose they're seeing the dollar signs, but I'm cool. I'm happy to have a conversation with these guys, because it's opening also up a conversation for faith. And so that's the taking ground. Like I'm observing in Christian music, there's incredible growth happening. In fact, it's one of the highest in terms of percentage of growth. It's one of the quickest growing genres in the world right now.
I didn't even know that.
It's incredible. Top 5 is something a statistic I saw recently. Apologies for not quoting my source, but it is, we're all seeing it. The numbers are growing.
So you think content, you're talking specifically about film content. What is it about that? Like, how do you think non-Christians are watching The Chosen?
I'm hearing so many stories about people finding Christ through a YouTube video that their algorithm served.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. Oh,
so
fully, bro.
I'm just talking about taking ground here.
Yeah.
It's like,
sure.
all right, and we're going to continue to innovate. Like, there's a rhetoric in the industry I'm in that, the worship space is so flooded, like it's overpopulated. Yeah, they're right, it is. But there'll never be enough Jesus songs. And it might just be like, look what Forrest Frank's doing right now. It's unbelievable,
it's amazing,
the crossover.
man. Yeah.
So his numbers are comparable with some of the biggest artists in the world.
Yeah. Well, he's doing a stadium tour right now.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable,
and
man.
So I'm excited, and now I'm seeing, there's a shift in, I think, the sentiment in the industry. It was always the Christian artists wanted to cross over, but I'm seeing general market artists want to collaborate with Christian artists now.
Wow.
Because they're just seeing it. Now, if they're just seeing the dollar signs and that's their entrance in, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, right.
Because they're starting to connect with believers, and that should always be a good thing.
I think something I really feel is, I think creatives actually have the biggest responsibility of outreach, even more than like your pastor and the church. And I think even creatives as a whole don't realize that, like, if you call whatever we do art, that represents the glory of God. And I don't know if you agree with this, but I believe, like what you're saying, like, how does someone find Jesus? It doesn't matter what it is, that person needs an encounter with the Holy Spirit. Like, if you never have an encounter with God, it doesn't matter how you served it. You need to have that encounter to have your life changed by Jesus. And I feel creatives have, like, almost in a bit of a hole, like, missed opportunity that we are the biggest outreachers of the gospel, because we create art that goes into the world, and like art and creativity, whether it's a building, music,
transcends
film,
words almost.
it just can hit you in the core in this feeling and introduce you to the glory of God like
music
no
does
other.
the same thing.
And it's like sometimes you just get trapped that you think you're only meant to serve God one way, but there is so many more avenues. And I really think creatives need to kind of like get off your butt a little bit. And like,
Josh is firing
like,
up.
to be honest, like, it's like sometimes it's like, it's the church's fault, it's this person's fault, it's the hippie guy that invites everyone to my church service's fault, there's not enough people getting saved. But it's like, God's given you a gift, you know what I mean, to just show the glory of God and like help people encounter him. And you're right, through YouTube, through things that, in this day and age where we have the biggest platforms, I think YouTube and TikTok are the most watched things.
Yeah, they are. Yep.
And anyone can post on it for free.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
And share your
access.
art, whether it's like music, creativity, draw, anything. And it's like, I just feel like, creatives like need to be stirred up a little bit more to like, no, create that thing and just do it. Don't wait for someone to give you permission. Like, what did I hear today? It resonated with me. People aren't sitting around. I'm not sitting around going, how can I help Cam Gullo? People aren't waiting to help you do your thing. It's like once you start, people, and you go to get help, you ask people for help or you ask that. But like, I feel like there's creatives waiting around for permission to just create. I'm like, God's already putting you already know what you want to do. You just got to do it. And it's like, sometimes you're going to miss fire and that's fine. That's art. Like you're going to fail. It's not going to be good. You might not write a hit song like you were saying, but yeah, I really feel like creatives need to like kind of just get a bit more hungry to be like, you know what I'm doing is serving a purpose to the greater body of Christ. And it's, people are going to get saved through this and then get connected in churches, get connected with people and find their people. But yeah.
Man, if I can add to that, I think the greatest, especially in the last 2,000 years, the greatest artists have been Christians. Like many of the greatest, like think about the buildings that have stood the test of time. Greatest architects, and there could be, a long list of reasons for that, but irrespective, those old church buildings that have throughout Europe and the greatest buildings ever built. Yeah. It's unbelievable. And they're still standing.
The revival of the building. Every person we've had on this is talking about old Christian
buildings.
Almost
every person has come back to this.
Yeah.
But then if you think about all the great paintings, was it Michelangelo? Yep. In the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
And you're like, are you kidding? The greatest artists have been in the church. Like, let it so continue. Let the greatest art come from within the halls of the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
we partner with the Creator. So it shouldn't be a coincidence. Shouldn't be a news flash.
Yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts. I think this is fascinating. I think I really sense a shift, man. Like not a baby out with the bathwater, because I agree with everything you guys said. But I just there is a major shift happening in the church, and I think creatives are going to be that prophetic voice again, because what you're talking about with how they were designed and the architecture and the art and the stained glass windows and the beauty of, the Renaissance period, they were the prophetic voice for the church. And somehow I think we've bottled it down to either you write music and you sing on stage, or you're behind a camera, and then we don't give light. Traditionally speaking, some churches might be great at this, but to the poet, what about the people who are I've never been to a service, I don't think, where someone's gotten up and, unless it's a special Easter thing, and done a poem. Like, I think we've got to get better at, and this is the heart of Kingdom Creatives, is that we can go, what is the creative gift that the Lord has given you, and how do you steward that, and how can your church come alongside you to steward that gift, And I think, we have this opportunity to be the prophetic voice for the church again. When you write a song, when we edit a film, when you do an image, like, it has the ability to transcend thought and like trying to figure it out. Like, there's a song, what's that song recently that I listened to? There was a song recently I listened to, and I remember just getting on my knees and just feeling the presence of the Lord, like the weight of the presence of the Lord, because there was something in the song that didn't really, like, it wasn't the lyrics that, resonated. It was the spirit behind the song. And we had the same ability through film, through images, through poem. I remember being at a conference in America, and it started off, we did the opener film, but then there was a poet who got up and did the poem over the top of the film. And I remember just going, what he said in that poem, like, said more to me than 1,000 words, it was maybe 50 words. Actually, your brother did this. Jono did this when I was at your Christmas service. He did the poem, and he was a bit like, oh, I've never really done this before, but he did it. And I feel like the poem is what I remembered from his sermon. It was he did this poem about Christmas, and it was a silly but also kind of profound in a lot of ways. And it was like less words, less polished, a bit awkward, because it's like we don't really do this very often. But that's what I remembered, and that's what resonated with me the most, because art and creativity, I feel, is such a strong prophetic voice.
Well, bro, it's good what you're saying, but it's difficult to make rules around those things, and I don't think you are trying to do that. But I think about the Psalms. We've got all these songs, many of them are songs, that David wrote, and those lyrics have been passed down.
Sure.
But they didn't come with any chord or melody. It's almost as if God's like, here you go, have these,
wow,
and sing your own melody according to your own culture, according to your own time, right? So I think about those Psalms. Those Psalms have been rewritten into songs for thousands of years.
Yeah, and will be.
And will be. And, heaven's likely using those lyrics too with their own melody.
Yeah.
So I love that. It's like God's going, here, like, I'm inviting you into this process. I'm going to give you a little bit. God's always used people, Think about music as well. Like, there's something, I don't really get too hoo-ha-y or anything like that, but this is something about music that moves people. And
Absolutely,
it's
bro.
difficult to put your finger on, but I think I'm going to attempt to put my finger on
Here we
it.
go.
Okay.
I'm paraphrasing N.T. Wright here in his book, Surprised by Hope. And he talks about heaven. He goes, he attempts to talk about the life to come. He talks about heaven and he goes, best I can describe it from what we know from scripture and church history is we have signposts in the fog. And I like that imagery. It's kind of a little bit
You
Narnia.
dropped a couple of bombs, actually.
Signposts in the fog. So it's like we got pointers in the right direction, but it's a bit blurry.
Yeah, wow.
Okay. So in speaking of in this same topic about heaven, what we know about, one of the things we know about heaven is that they sing there. And music is straight from heaven. It's been given to us we don't know a whole lot about what's happening up there, but we know they sing and we're singing on earth. And that's why there's something in the song, in music that is different from most other things that happen in existence. It's different to eating. It's different to watching. It's different from it's its own whole league of experience. And when we put Jesus, truly anointed, inspired Jesus lyrics to that, and we have what Pat Patterson would call the merriment of perfect melody and perfect lyric, something incredible happens.
So true.
Heaven might come a little closer to earth. Yeah. Anyway, let your imaginations go there. But
They are.
signposts in the fog.
Yeah.
I love that. I think some songs are just blessed, eh? Like some songs just hit a generation and you're just like, how is that not from heaven?
I call it a download.
Yeah. And like you hear the stories half the time, like, oh, it just happened.
Yeah.
Like the chords just came, we had the melody, took us 30 minutes.
Can we talk about a great awakening?
We sure can.
That was my next question.
Because
Perfect.
I hear,
Also, incredible song.
Yeah.
thanks, bro. And I know your church has really taken that on this year, City Point. I think as your
Shout out City Point.
Yeah,
shout out
it's
City
called
Point.
Awaken.
Love everyone
We
there.
sang it first Sunday back
Really?
at 6. I was worshiping from
We
the
had it on here
cafe.
yesterday.
We did. How did it's been?
Literally, we came in,
everywhere.
worshipped together, and we had it on. Anyway, tell us the story about that song, bro.
So God's blessed me to steward this song. I didn't write it, but two artists that I represent, Alexander Pappas, who I shared about earlier, and Lachlan Holmes from Southland Australian Worship Group. I put them together. They were, I don't know if they'd met before that day. Maybe they had, but
Locke's a big reason we met.
yeah, that's true. Thank you, Lachlan.
Thanks, Locke.
And so put them together, and they were actually writing for Southland, and it was the end of Lachlan's trip to the USA. I'd sent him over there, or his church had sent him over there. We organised a bit of a writing trip for him to go and find songs for this album, which comes out February 21st, 22nd. Next month. Well, I don't know when this podcast's out, but it's coming out.
We'll
The
check with the manager.
Album's, yeah. Album's called Like the World It's Never Seen. Shout out.
Shout out. Plug, links in bio probably.
And so something happened that rarely happens to me. These boys sent me a song. It was just a voice memo. It sounded like the iPhone was 10 meters away from the piano where they were all singing. So it was a distant thing. And through the course of my work, I'll hear probably thousands of songs a year, I reckon. Like as in like submitted songs for consideration.
Sure. Yeah.
At least 1,000.
Yeah.
More maybe. And so they sent me that song and I was like, that's the song. I knew it straight away, just from an iPhone tape. So there's no dressing on production.
Yeah.
I didn't even have a lyric sheet. I could just hear them singing. I was like, that's a song. And it's only happened a few times and I get that immediate check.
What was it, do you think?
It's just, there's something in it.
Yeah,
like
okay.
it's just,
You felt
it's
it.
an
When you
ingredient
hear
of a
it,
song.
yeah, I agree. Like first time you hear it, you're just like, wow.
There's an ingredient is just, and the whole lyric, everything. I 99% of the song came in that one session, that happens, but it was
rare.
quick. It was it was a download. And I remember I've thanked God multiple times for that. I think that song's been a blessing to the body of Christ already.
Absolutely.
In unlocking something. But that God would use, that would involve me in that process is pretty epic. But it's a download. Stephen Pressfield, he wrote an incredible book called The War of Art, not the art of war. It's a play on that. The War of Art. And side note, he famously quotes in this book, they say, it's a book about like overcoming your creative blocks and like kind of bringing the real creative out in you. And he's famously asked, kind of probably the most famous line in this book. He said, well, someone asked me, Stephen, do you sit down and write only when creativity strikes? Like, in a moment of like sort of when the juices are flowing, or do you write on routine? And he goes, and his response is, well, look, truth is I do actually only write when creativity strikes, But fortunately, that's at 9 a.m. every morning,
Yeah.
which is
awesome.
incredible, right? So
Yeah.
he's disciplined. He's
Wow.
got, he sits
Yeah.
down, and irrespective of what's happening, he's working.
Yeah.
He's putting pen to paper.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
inspiring.
stewardship.
But in this book, he talks about, now he's not a Christian, but he's a believer in some form of the divine.
Sure.
And he says before he sits down to work, in this book, in the early pages of this book, he goes, I thank the divine.
Yeah.
Because I recognize that something's going on up there. And then for whatever reason, they choose to give it to me. There's a
Right.
download.
He's close.
He's close.
Yeah.
And so for the Christian creative, I'd encourage you, rather I implore you, when you sit down to work, thank God.
Yeah.
Invite him into the process. Lord, from you are all who blessings flow. God, everything comes from you. You are the great creator. Lord, would you see it fit to bless me today with something incredible? And even if you don't, God, you're still amazing. You're still, etc. Right? But God, would you give it to me?
Yeah.
Give it to me. Download. Give me something.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm waiting. What a great way to start
That is so
the
true.
creative process each day.
That's so true.
I feel like singing. I'm not going to, but I just feel like, you know what I mean? Like I just feel like,
There's a song in your spirit, brother.
yeah.
Yeah, that probably
Actually,
is.
funny you say that. Like the other day, I'm a church musician. So like grew up.
I know the kind.
He's on the
Yes.
toms lately
Yeah, I know. I was having a smack around. I was actually
On the
pretty good.
tubs.
on the tubs.
On the tubs, bro. And I was at home the other day, and just funny you're saying this, and I was a bit down in the dumps, to be honest. I was a bit like, I was feeling a bit overwhelmed, and I was feeling a bit like, just I wasn't, and I was like, I now know when I feel like that, I got to get on my knees, you know. And the last 18 months, 2 years, I've just been like, when I feel like that, get on your knees. So I got up out of bed, and Bloom was asleep, and Jazz was out, and I got on my knees, and I'm not joking. I got on my knees. A song just came to me, bro. A song, and I just started singing, man. Like I just literally just started singing, and an entire song came out. Like it recorded it.
Like an original song.
I don't know. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool. No,
Yeah, a song I wrote, nothing but the blood. Nah, just kidding.
No, I was wondering. Is
Yeah,
it original?
yeah, bro. And like these lyrics, just like, and I'm not a songwriter. I've traditionally been very trash at it, not very good. And it was just like, it was like I wasn't even thinking. It was transcending everything.
Wow.
Downloads.
That's so cool.
And it was a download. And when you said that, it's so true. And I was like, it got me thinking, whether it's a song, whether it's a poem, whether it's a video, an edit idea, a painting, you're making something with your hands, any creative process, there is a download that we can access. And I've had this happen before with editing. I'm like, I scrap a whole edit and I do a new one, usually particularly when it's for a church or for something kingdom. And then, you know, that flow you get in where it's like, you're just struggling, just head up against the wall. And then the next edit, you scrap it and you go again. You're like, oh, we're on here. Bang, there's a flow, there's like a download that takes place. And I feel like because we're talking about creativity, in all creative processes, I think there is a download that takes place when you go, God, you get on your knees and you humble yourself and you say, like you said before, you said, I killed Isaac at the altar. I was willing to lay it down and say, God, take it. And that's not until the ram in the thicket is provided. And that's when the download happens. Well, God goes, here we go. I can bless this now because he doesn't have an idol. You know, he's at the end of himself or herself. And I think with everyone's creative gift, particularly, my creative gift didn't begin truly until I was willing to lay it down
Yeah, so true.
and say, Lord, take it. And
Well,
none
you
of
and
this-
I know we've spoken separately about this.
Yeah.
Like you have a similar story, don't you?
had the exact same word. I mean, the whole reason we're
Which is
sitting
mental.
here, the whole reason you guys are listening, the whole reason any of this is even happening is because it was a laying down and going, God, I don't need this. I don't want this anymore. This now, Lord, is truly all yours. You know this story intimately. I mean, he was part of the whole process from the very beginning. And I said, this is no longer mine. This is truly yours. And I think before that, there was a bit of lip service, but this time it was real. And
I
then
feel that.
I feel like God goes, I can bless that now,
Yeah.
you know? And then the ram in the thicket comes and
How-
Isaac doesn't have to die.
Just to focus on that for a moment, it wasn't lip service, it was real. Man, oh man, there's a difference there.
Oh, bro.
Yeah.
Because look, if you're listening to this and you're a Christian, you're likely been on an altar call or something. You've pleaded with
Yeah.
God and you've said
Yeah.
things, but like, is it left there or is it like, you know what I mean? There's a
Yeah.
shift there that's like,
I actually think it's not until you come to the end of yourself, then he can begin to, I can work with this, you know, like, because I feel like for me, it was lip service. I didn't want it to be lip service, but I think it was because I wasn't actually at the end of myself and what I mean by that is like, not depressed or down or anything, but just really going, I can't do this without you, Jesus. I cannot do this without you. Whereas before, I think, it was, I give you everything, but like, I'm still good Monday. Like, I'm still like, I can still kind of get this done and cope by myself, And I feel like to get to that point, you have to get to the end of you thinking you can do it on your own and going, Jesus, I can't, none of this is anything without you. Like, and I feel, and I know this for you, like it wasn't until you were at the end of yourself, God, I am not going to make it.
But like, again, the difference in the lip service and the like when I shared that story before, I went home and got rid of all the gear. Like it really was not I'm just saying it.
No,
like,
it was real.
And I didn't, and I wasn't, it was over.
Yeah. Yeah, you were done.
It was a full
You were
down.
done.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. End of yourself. You were done. Like, Lord, I'm done with my agenda. I'm done with my way of doing it, and it's all yours. And I think there's power in that. That's where the download happens. You know what I mean? And we're having blowouts today, aren't we? Jeez.
The three.
Don't bring us into this. I think there's a solo blowout happening in the center chair.
Yeah, there is, and it's been happening all day.
Thank you for saying that.
Yes.
You're welcome. I love that. I think on the download thing, I honestly think sometimes as well, which I'm a big believer for it, and for people in music have asked me this, so I don't know why they asked me, because I'm like
you're not musical?
I'm like the sixth man, like the end of the bench choir singer type person. Like
the last pick.
Yeah, I'm definitely putting the choir for like more the vibes, less the vocals.
Have you done choir?
Dude, I'm all for the church choir.
Hell yeah.
Dude, salvation happens in the choir. When you can get in the body of Christ and you're with the people just singing to the Lord no matter what you're going through.
Even if you don't sound good.
Yeah, it's like that is
I love
Christianity in action. But one thing I've realized is there is a download that happens, and sometimes I think more creative focused, like especially with songs like you were saying before, like I didn't get a hit song. It's like sometimes God can give you something that is just for you. Like the song you had, we don't know it. We didn't hear it, but you had such a moment, and that blesses you and it blesses God. And sometimes God will give songs, art, things to his children, and he goes, you know what, this is just between you and me. It doesn't need to be a recognition success. People don't even need to hear it. But then other times he will give you something and go, you know what, this one though is for everything. But sometimes it's like we can get confused. It's like, oh, I'm trying to make success out of this or something, and like, because it's like, it is a blessing to be able to like, my job's a worship leader, or my job's that stuff. So it's like, there is always like, it can get a bit lost, but I honestly do believe it's like those downloads can happen to anyone, but they don't need to be a commercial success.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said
download.
That, because, I've seen a lot of rhetoric online about, this topic specifically, like why are we singing songs from this small group of people, which if you go and look at CCLI, which is the chart that shows you all the popular Christian songs, there's not there's a lot of songs, but there's not heaps of writers.
Oh, true.
Right? It's like, there might be 50 different writers,
sure.
But really in the grand scheme of things.
Starts with Brendan Lake.
Phil Wickham. And guys.
Two goats too though, by the way.
Of course, guys that I love and respect and am grateful for. So, and mind you, guys that devote their life to this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, this thing I saw recently was like, well, why instead of singing that, shouldn't we be focusing on what the local creative pastor's got expressed for his church individually? Well, you know what? Probably not, because I want the local guy to be looking after his local people.
Yeah,
like
right.
I need him to make sure
shepherd
rosters are done. People looked after. He's having coffees with his team there, that they're actually being pastored and being led depending on what his position is.
Sure.
I actually want to sing songs by people that devote their life to this stuff because they're better songs. I'm involved in my worship team. I want to sing the best songs on Sunday.
It's so true.
And if it was me bringing my song, the truth is, it's just not the best song.
Yeah, unless it's a specific download for a reason. For you know what I mean.
And there could be context around that.
Right.
And it could be
right.
But
again, there's no rules like you were saying before. Yeah.
I'm not making a rule around this, but people are trying to make rules.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm like, whoa, like, cool. If you want to sing the songs that just your local creative pastors sung for you, cool, like no one's stopping you. But to then do this big broad brush saying, oh, we shouldn't be singing.
Yeah,
like,
I see what you're saying.
What? Just do you, man. And let everyone else sing the best songs. That's what I'm interested in. I'm very grateful for that. People like Brooke and Brandon and Phil, many of the others have devoted their lives to the craft.
More than a blessing.
Because what they're doing is they're giving words to the people of God to say that they never would have otherwise thought to say. Like if you're not a words person, you might be like, well, God, thank you. Yeah. But that's good. But like, I want to say things like Brooke's singing because it's just so eloquently put.
Yeah, so true.
It's just incredible.
Completely
And the
agree.
Church of Christ was born, you know, and like and that credible verse in verse 3
man.
of Kings, and the Spirit lit the flame.
Was born. Oh.
You know what I mean? Like that just gets me going. So
Honey in the Rock, bro, one of the greatest songs of our era. Love it. Bro, I got a question for you, last question, because I know you probably got to go.
and so do the listeners.
Yeah, the listeners. Yeah, well, some of them stay.
Oh, that's cool.
The stats are pretty good, bro. Once they're in, they're in. So I think we're
We
good.
lose a lot in the first 10 seconds.
Look,
and
for the last 200,000 that are left, this is a good question. Bro, so my last question to you is this: you could go back to 18-year-old Cameron right now, and you could just say, bro, this. What would you say to younger man? And take your time. You can take your time. But what would you say to him?
I'm assuming you're talking in relation to this whole broader conversation, career, creativity,
Sure,
etc.
but also just whatever comes to mind, bro.
Let's keep it on topic then.
Yeah.
So I would say, I think personally, I wish I'd kind of come to that realization that I wasn't going to, inverted commas, make it in music sooner because I strived for too long. And looking back, I go, man, you're so good at sales and music business. Like, why didn't you get into that earlier?
Yeah,
like,
right.
you enjoyed music, but so I think sometimes people are, they have a passion for something, but they might not be very good. It's a reality. I wasn't good enough. I was borderline competent at best. So, but how did I realize
So savage.
it's brutal. It was brutal when I realized it.
Yeah, that is brutal.
So I would say, like, play to your strengths. Like when you're a coach of a sporting team, you put the players in position where they're the strongest.
Yeah.
And of course, what's necessary to the greater play. But the reality is, the best point guard's, he's a point guard. Like that's his best play, you know. And so I wish I'd played to my strengths sooner.
Interesting.
And ask a mentor or someone you trust or someone older than you, what do you think I'm good at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what do you say, especially in the church world, where we're on a creative team and we're serving maybe in different departments? Like, what do I have an edge at?
Yeah.
Because I actually want to start sharpening that tool earlier on. My best, heard a great piece of advice, and I'm so pleased to be able to share this now, and it's led to this. A really good friend of mine, his name's David Manor. He's like a really renowned photographer in Sydney, and he does a lot of different things. Sold out Jesus followers, epic
love
dude.
Love that.
And on a creative panel, he was asked a very similar question: what one piece of advice would you give to the young creatives here today? It was at a church team night, and he said this. And it's always stuck with me. He said it. I heard him say it 10 years ago. He says, "Get so good at your craft in your 20s, because in your 30s, your friends become the decision makers."
What do you mean by that?
Get so good at your craft in your 20s, refine it, because when you hit your 30s, all the people you've been doing life with and been sharpening your skills with, they start to become in positions of influence and power, etc. And as we all know, most of our work is done through relationship.
So true.
Yeah.
Most of our work comes through relationship. It comes through reputation. So developing your skill in your 20s, because when you hit your early 30s, everyone around you is in position now.
Right.
And then are your tools ready or not?
Yeah, and you'll be found out pretty quick. Wow.
I know it doesn't rhyme, but it's really powerful.
You've dropped 4 or 5 bombs, and that ranks right in there with the best. Do you know what I mean? I'd love for you to, thank you so much, bro. I really appreciate it. I'd love for you to just, I don't know, maybe just a quick prayer, or as long as you want, really. But man, honestly, we get messages all the time, people listening to this. I don't know that hear it through whatever, and it blesses them. I just wonder if you could just, we can just stop for a second and just hear what the Holy Spirit has to say and pray for people listening. Would you do that for us?
Yeah, it'd be an honor.
Awesome.
All right. Well, Holy Spirit, God, we thank you that you've been present in this conversation. This conversation exists to point people to you, help people find you. And Lord, in doing so, God, help the gifts of their life to flourish. Ultimately, God, that it will glorify you. So Lord, we just ask, God, for my brothers here, Sam and Josh, God, and for everyone listening, Lord, that your Spirit would be so present in their lives. God, you would help lead them into their calling and into their destiny. And you'd help them have conversations that help them realize, God, those very gifts that you've given them, Lord, because you've given them to them specifically, God, for the benefit of their lives, but for your glory. And so, Lord, that's our prayer. That's our prayer right now, God. Would you do this good work in us, God, for our benefit, but for your glory? So, God, we commit this whole conversation to you in the great and mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, bro. How
Thanks,
can people
Cam.
get in touch with you if, I don't know, if they're an artist, I don't know, whatever. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, my Instagram's Cameron.Gullo.
Yep. Love
And
it.
my email is Cameron
Yep.
at 1606mgmt.com.
1606, is that the name of the business?
Yeah, 1606 Management.
What is that, quickly?
That was the year Australia was originally discovered by the Portuguese explorer Pedro Fernandes, and he named Australia Terra Australis del Espirito Santo, which translates to Southland of the Holy Spirit.
Oh, come on.
That is a way to end the podcast. I love you, my brother. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Bess.
And tune in next time. We'll see you soon. Hey, thanks for joining us. Just remember, if you click that little subscribe button, it will help so much get these episodes out to people who need to hear it. And we know we receive messages all the time of like, thank you so much, exactly what I needed, exactly what I needed to hear. This is amazing. And so that's what that does. Would you also connect with us on Instagram, connect with us on our website, our email's on there. We would love to connect with you. What I'd also love for you to do is to jump into the comments on the reel and just let us know, who would you love to see on the podcast? Who's the ideal person to sit down for a chat on Kingdom Creatives? And we'll do our best to get them. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.